Everyone. Today I'm continuing on with my journey through the movies of 1972, a year-long project of what movies were like 50 years ago. And a lot of these movies I saw back in 1972, so I'm seeing them through the eyes of 50 years later. What were they like then? How do they look today? Now, I'm going to start a series since it's October and Halloween and of horror films from 1972. It was not a banner year for horror films, I don't believe. There was really no high-profile horror films, at least. In the 60s, we had Psycho, The Birds, and Rosemary's Baby, and I'm sure there were some other ones around as well. And in 1973, the year later, came The Exorcist, which brought horror film into the stratosphere as far as commercial success. But you can attribute a lot of that to the fact that the novel, The Exorcist, was such a popular novel that people were really looking forward to seeing a movie version of it. But most of the horror films from 1972 are kind of under the radar kind of movies, lower budget. And I'm going to start out with Mario Bava's Barren Blood, but other films that I'm definitely going to do Asylum, which just came in the mail today. I'm going to do Sisters, the Brian De Palma film, and I just found The Possession of Joel Delaney playing on YouTube. There's one film that that I really would love to find, and that's a movie called The Other, and that was directed by Robert Mulligan, I think I got that right, but it was from a novel by Tom Tryon, who was also an actor, and he also wrote the book The Cardinal that Otto Preminger made back in the 1960s. And that was a very intriguing kind of psychological, slow burn horror. Has a very similar vibe to The Sixth Sense. But as of now, I've not been able to find. I think there is a copy on YouTube playing, but it didn't look very good, and I think it had very big subtitles. I can't remember what language it was, but it didn't look watchable. But anyways, let's get to Barren Blood, which was directed by Mario Bava. It stars Elke Summer and Joseph Cotten, although Joseph Cotten plays a very small role, a significant role to be sure. But over half the film is over by the time he appears. And Barren Blood, and I've not seen any Mario Bava films at all. I might have seen little bits and pieces of them, but this is the first one I've seen from beginning to end, and it's very much a compendium of the familiar narrative themes and situations that are part of the horror genre, especially as far as 1972 goes. And it's based on the premises: a relative comes back to the family castle, and in which there was, centuries before, there was a baron who burnt witches and was just a totally evil man, and he's said to haunt the castle. And this young man, who is his ancestor, he wants to get in touch with his past. He wants to learn who his identity is. What is this all about, this castle that's part of his family legend? So we get very much a feel of, House of Wax is in the commentary we learned, this is a whole lot of House of Wax in this film. And I got a feeling of the Phantom of the Opera. Occasionally there's an organ being played, and we have a woman, a very beautiful woman, being chased down the hallways of the castle, the narrow hallways, the spiral staircases, and then again chased in a smoky nighttime environment, very shadowy, where we see the emanation of the Baron in shadows, and we get a little girl who's being chased down a forest pathway, being chased again by this monstrous Baron. So we get a good bit of the occult. We get a bit of ESP, The little girl herself seems to have a ESP. We get the torture, kind of medieval castle torture, the Iron Maiden, the spike coffin. But to me, the real interest of the film, for me, as I'm not particularly attuned to all these horror tropes, but I was just I was overwhelmed by Bava's cinematography. He not only directed, but he was the cinematographer as well. And we learned that his father was a cinematographer in Italian cinema back started out in like 1912. So we get in the castle itself, we get a great light show of shadows and darkness, and the other thing, the star of the film is really this castle. This was a castle that they found. It was about 10 miles, I think it said, north of Vienna. Absolutely perfect for the film. They were searching around for appropriate castles to use, and this one was absolutely perfect. And you can see that Mario Bava is just a great cinematographer. I mean, this is the colors, the vividness of the colors. But again, you know, the especially in that nighttime chase scene, that's just so beautiful with the fog or the smoke, and very compelling movie to watch from that point of view. This was Elke Sommer's first horror film. She had been in lots of American films and European films, but she had never been in a horror film, so she really wanted to make this film. And one of the real joys of this film is her wardrobe. And when I was reading some contemporaneous reviews of Baron Blood, the reviewers complained, what is this? And this is from the State Board in 1972. What is this wardrobe she's wearing? I mean, it's garish, it's overdone. Every scene she has like a new fashion design, but it's so colorful that it actually looks. I actually enjoyed it. I didn't have any complaints about her wardrobe and the hats, and I mean it does. And the feeling of the reviewers with it jars with this. With this antiquity that because she's like a student of all this kind of art of this era, and this castle is full of great art and all kinds of different art objects. Like I say, Joseph Cotten had a very small role in this film, and he was getting towards the end of his career where he wasn't going to be a leading man anymore, but he wanted to keep working. Horror films of this sort, these kind of low-budget horror films, would always go for American actors hoping to get the American film market. And there's another actor in here who plays a professor. His name is Massimo Garratti, and he looks so familiar to me. And then in the commentary, we're told that he was the lead in Luchino Visconti's Assessioni, which was Visconti's adaptation of The Postman Always Rings Twice, and so he played the John Garfield part in the American version. And then after this film, he went right to Paris to make Last Tango in Paris. He was Marlon Brando's friend in that film. Tim Lucas gives the commentary, and he wrote a book on Mario Bava, and so he knows everything there is to know about his career, and he notes all the scenes where Bava is referencing scenes that he had already filmed in earlier films, and also his use of zoom. He very much this thrusting zoom that goes right into the face of somebody who's terrified. And at one point he actually does a 4 zoom. I've never seen that in a film before. He goes back and forth very quickly. And I think kind of effective. It may be an affectation, but it's pretty effective. And much of Lucas's commentary focuses on the producer, Alfredo Leone, evidently no relation to Sergio Leone. And he had already made a film with Bava before, and I believe he is the producer of Bava's films. This part of his late career, because Bava was already 60 in 1972, and there was already these younger Italian film directors who were focusing in on horror films. He sort of had to keep up with the trend, and Lucas also tells a story because the movie was very successful. In the United States, there was a different version by AIP, the Arkoff brothers, I think, who Bava had worked with before to make films. And this film is all in English, and everybody is speaking English. I'm not certainly Elke Summer and Joseph Cotton's voice very familiar. Whether the Italian actors were definitely speaking English, whether they did their own dubbing or not, I don't know. So it was the AIP version. The Arkoffs didn't like the musical score, so they had their own musical score, and they also cut out moments. And Lucas, this Blu-ray, this is Kino Blu-ray only. This is the international version, not the U.S. domestic version. So they also cut out a few scenes here and there that Lucas points out. So it was successful, and Lucas tells one story about the initial screening that they went to, and Federico Fellini was standing in the back at the screening, and Lucas said Fellini, as it turns out, was a big Mario Bava fan, and he went up to congratulate him. And then there was another screening, and Alfred Leone was sitting next to a man who had this kind of like nervous tic, and he couldn't, when Bava asked him, well, how did you think it came out? And he said, well, I was so distracted by this man sitting next to me. And Bava looked over and he said, that's Michelangelo Antonioni. And he does have, some nervous disorder. And Antonioni, and so Bava introduced Leone to Antonioni, and Antonioni was very complimentary about the movie. So all in all, it was a good start, I think, to my trip through the horror films here in October of 2022, and I think Asylum will probably be the next one in line. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.